Trade has been on our agenda for the last number of meetings we've had among the G7 finance ministers and central bank governors. So clearly the new activities, if you want to call it that, the tariffs that the U.S. has put on Canadian steel and aluminum will add an additional flavor to that and will make some difficulty in our discussions. We do know that we have a broader agenda, which is to make sure that our trading system creates benefits for all countries and that we deal with non-market economies in a way that actually gets more productivity around our trading relationship. So that is the long-term agenda. Short-term, we're going to have some words, I'm sure, from all of us to say that we don't think, as allies, that we should have tariffs for security reasons on any of us. But from a Canadian perspective, let me just say that it seems absurd that there would be tariffs put on Canada from a security point of view on steel and aluminum. We are America's best ally, best friend.
I want to ask you, on a personal level, you've spent a lot of time working with Steve Mnuchin on a few different files. You know him, I think you like him. In a moment like this, does it feel, is there a kind of a personal blow where somebody's letting you down?
Stephen and I have forged a relationship since we've been in these roles, and that's important. We've, of course, become friendly and talk about many files, but friends have disagreements sometimes, and I will be expressing in a very straightforward way the fact that we need to defend Canadians when an action is taken that is not in our best interests. We would rather be showing our friendship by standing side by side with Americans and improving our economies so that Canadians and Americans will benefit. What we're going to say with our actions, what we've said with our actions, is that if we can't, we'll stand side by side, Canadians beside Canadians, and say that these actions don't make sense. They're hurting Americans, they're hurting Canadians. We need to get to another step, and that's where a good relationship comes in. We need to talk about what do we do next to get ourselves into a better place that's positive for all of us.
Trade deals are hard to negotiate even in the best of faith, even when everybody agrees that they should get done. Secretary Ross made it pretty clear that this is retaliation for not having NAFTA closer to where he'd like to see it. What can you, the Canadians, the Mexicans, do to ease the tensions around that and move the ball a little bit without hurting your own interests?
We want to be talking about NAFTA, so that is an ongoing goal of ours. We think that getting to an agreement that's better for all three countries is a positive opportunity. We can't, though, accept terms of NAFTA that will actually be bad for Canada. So there will always be red lines that we will need to hold up. We want to get back to the table. We think that there's a way for us to come to terms in a way that will be positive, but it will include us saying pretty clearly that there's some things that we can't compromise on. We can't have an investment cycle that is only 5 years long, because anybody watching your show that's an investor knows that that's not long enough to bring something to fruition and get the returns. We also need to have a way to resolve disputes. A deal isn't a deal unless there's a way to actually figure out problems down the road. So these are non-negotiables, and there are other things that we can get to that'll have mutual advantage, and that's where we want to be.
So far, the World Trade Organization has been one place where disputes at least get heard, not always settled to satisfaction. But is that organization in danger of being disenfranchised, of being sidelined?
I think the WTO is an important organization for advancing the cause of global trade. There is certainly stress in every aspect of the trading world right now, caused by some disruption. I expect that over the long term, what we're all going to see is that trade is important, but what we need to reflect on is how we ensure that that trade creates benefits for all of our citizens. That is the underlying issue that we're talking about here. The reason we're at the table talking about this is because there's a legitimate concern among people in many countries that trade has not necessarily benefited them, and they see that disruption as being problematic, and politicians are reacting to that. Our goal then is to get back on the trade agenda, to firmly say what's important to us, and to recognize that we need to have benefits from that trade going broadly in our countries. That's what we're talking about at the G7. We're talking about that as an underlining important principle, how we can have growth for everyone. That's where we're going to try and get to over the next couple of days.